Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I want to welcome you to Mission TV Live. Tonight, our guest is joining us all the way from Cambodia via Skype. We'll be discussing needs in the mission field.
Hello and welcome again to Mission TV Live. I thank you, Stephanie, for that great introduction to the show. And we'd like to welcome our viewers again. It's so great to have you with us this Monday night. I am Natalie Wood, and I have my husband, John Wood, with me on the set tonight. And our topic, as Stephanie told you, is needs in the mission field. And for those of you that follow us on Facebook or get our emails, you know that the question for tonight was, what do you see is the biggest need in the mission field? We've had a few responses, not as many as we had hoped for, but we did have a few responses this week. So thank you to those that responded, and we'll be sharing a little bit of that also. I want to remind you that a little later in the show, we'll be taking your calls live, but you can email, you can send us a message on Facebook, or you can send us a message on Twitter at any time. Let me run through those for you right now. Our phone number is 423-413-7321. If you'd like to send an email, it's live@missiontv.com. Facebook is Mission TV Live. Twitter is MissionTV_com. So any of those ways you can get through to us this evening. If you want to call, we're going to take those calls during the time that we're on Skype with Tim Maddox this evening. And please pray, because we haven't been able to connect with Tim yet this evening, which it's morning for him in Cambodia. And he was up late last night talking to us this morning. That's confusing, isn't it? But anyway, we just look forward to the opportunity to talk to Tim about some of the needs he knows of and he sees every day and deals with in Cambodia. Well, honey, what do you have to start us out with this evening?
Well, I've got some really good comments actually on my my question on my Facebook. I really love my friends. I think that's a positive thing. But again, you know, needs in the mission field. You think, well, of course there's needs, but there's a lot of people that think that don't realize that there are needs in the mission field. So tonight we kind of want to take a look at what are the needs in the mission field. Are there any needs in the mission field? And this is kind of sparked. The subject is kind of sparked by a couple of young sisters that came to Bangkok a few years ago, and they were in Bangkok for like 2 weeks, and they says, we didn't realize that there were needs in the mission field. If we had realized that, we would have done something. We would have helped. They didn't know that. So we're going to take a little look at that tonight. The question I posted this morning,
Go ahead.
On Facebook was, what is the greatest need in the mission field? And I got some fantastic comments. One was the power from on high and the latter rain. And that is absolutely what we need, and we should be praying for that. But in also praying, we should be working in preparation for that, so that when it does pour out, then we can be moved farther forward in service. Another one was selflessness, which is huge. It's amazing that people think, well, missionaries, they're like angels or something like that. And God doesn't call angels into the mission field. He calls people.
Right.
And so that dying to self is a necessary thing here at home, but also as we go. Just because we go as missionaries doesn't mean we're completely dead to self. We may have sacrificed a few things. We still have ourselves with us and our way of thinking and dealing with situations. Those that will take up the cross and fully devote themselves to the mission of God. So people, consecrated, devoted people is a big need, according to this one person. Then another one is a group of people who have an unyielding heart towards God and a love for others that is radical. Now he's talking about like a group of people, so like a church. And I used to think, well, if I just go out and do this work, then just my effort, God can just use me to do a lot. But I read a statement by Ellen White. She says, The outpouring of the latter rain will not take place until a majority of God's people know what it means to work in service, harmony, in conjunction with Jesus Christ. In other words, until the majority of God's church is in service, active service, the latter rain will not be poured out.
Wow.
So that's like a prerequisite. But it goes on to say the combination, and a love for others that is radical. This love for others, we think, well, that's one of the byproducts. But that is actually the aim of Christ in our hearts. The mission of Christ to my heart is to plant a love so deep that when I love, and as Mrs. White says in Desire of Ages, page 641, when we love the world as Christ loved it, then his mission to us is complete. We are prepared for heaven because we have heaven in our hearts. So that love for the world, apart from being painful and sacrificing, everything like that, there's a heaven there. There's a joy there when we have that love for the world, that pitying love. It says, this would produce a spectacular culture in the church and tremendous results in the way we display Christ to the world. And that's what the world is looking for, is a display of Christ's character. So I got some beautiful things. I love my friends on Facebook. And I wanted to look at a couple of things, a couple of concepts, maybe some myths. As we get into this, one of the myths is that, well, if we don't do the work, then Christ will do it some other way. But I saw a statement a while back, and it said, we are God's plan A for reaching the world. He has no plan B. And I was wondering about that. Is that true? And I have found that that is true in the Word and in spirit of prophecy. That God has us. And people say, well, he'll finish the work no matter what his church does. Yeah, he'll bring it to a close. He'll bring it to a culmination. But what about all the people that are dying in the first place? What about all the people that died today? Well, I hear a lot of people say, I can't believe in a God that would let that happen to that person. Maybe a little girl, big tragedy hit her life. It was unspeakable tragedy. I can't believe in a God that would let that happen. Well, his church is sitting by letting it happen.
Yeah.
And God's getting the blame. God's looking for a people that will take that blame away from him and say, well, this thing happened, but look, God's people are doing something about it. And because of them, I believe there is a God. People will be so selfless. It is the privilege.
Go ahead.
It is the privilege of every Christian not only to look for, but to hasten the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Now, there's a verse that's referred to there.
Okay.
And that's Matthew 24 and verse 14.
Uh-huh.
I actually had a different text picked out for this evening, but Matthew 24:14, it says, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come. So it's basically the same thing.
Right.
That it has to be preached before the end shall come.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a connection there. There's a like if then kind of.
Right.
I used to do
Exactly.
programming, and that's one of the if then else. There isn't an else, but
Yeah, it's like this has to be in place for this to happen.
Right.
And we often think, well, we need to be more holy. When Christ's character is perfectly reproduced in his people, then he'll come. And so we think, well, I got to pray more, I got to study more, I got to lose my temper less. When in actuality, what's really needing to take place is the gospel going to the world. Because see, that does two things. That not only takes the gospel to the world and fulfills that command, but it also perfects our character.
So before we get on to the needs in the mission field, because I
Okay.
know that's where we're going, I want to point out a word there
Okay.
in the first line, and it says privilege.
Privilege.
We do have a command.
Yes.
The gospel, the Great Commission, we call it the Great Commission. Go ye therefore and preach the gospel to every nation, to kindred, tongue, and people. I think I'm, putting together like Matthew and John or something. But anyway, it's that's a command, but it's also a privilege. That's what Christ came for. That's what he came for. In a nutshell, he came to hasten his second coming.
And it's our privilege to enter into that joy
Right.
and that work with that man, Jesus.
Right. So let's move forward with needs. We want to get to our special Skype call here.
Okay, this is the second part of that statement. Jesus said, "This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations," which is the Matthew 24:14. And then she says, "This bombshell, his kingdom will not come until the good tidings of his grace have been carried to all the earth.
Wow.
Hence, as we give
Will not.
ourselves to God and win other souls to him, we hasten the coming of his kingdom." That's what God's waiting for. He's waiting for this work to be done, of
Okay.
taking the gospel to those that, I mean, Christ isn't coming for his, somebody likened this to the final temple. You know, we had the temple in the wilderness, and we had Solomon's temple. This is the final temple, which is built of every nation, kindred, tribe, and tongue. Okay, every language in the world. Christ isn't coming for a bride that's not all there. He's waiting for the bride to be all put together, made up of every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, and then he'll come. And this is the sad part. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, we need more money to stay here in America. Well, 92% of all Christian giving goes to minister to the 6.5% that speaks English. That's a little bit disproportionate.
A little.
A little disproportionate, okay? Now, I want to talk about the voiceless voices. You know, we hear people calling, maybe there's a church in, let's say, Hawaii or Texas or Oregon, and the church is there, and they don't have a pastor, haven't had a pastor for a while. So they put out a call. We need a pastor. Here's a salary. Here's, enough for him to get a house. We need a pastor. The call goes out. Everybody hears that call. You know, there's people, there's mechanisms, there's organizations in place to receive that call and to fill that call. Now, what about the places with the greatest need?
Well, if they don't know they have a need, who's going to call for help?
Exactly.
Who's calling for help? There's no one calling for help because there's nobody that knows that there's a need.
Exactly. And Christ went to find the one that was lost. He left the 99 and went out to find the one. Now, if we call ourselves Christians, followers of Christ, could we do anything different? But we don't. Statistically saying, today, we're not doing that. We are not doing that. Maybe 0.5 cent of every dollar that we give in all of our giving, maybe that might go to reach the unreached. The rest of it goes to support. In fact, the funding has been drying up so much that they can barely keep going what they started in the 60s. Many times what they started in the 60s has been closed down because of drying up of the resources. I want to take one look at one division.
Area.
Yes, this is...
And we looked at this not long ago with Pastor Doug Venn when he was here. So we want to refresh our course
Yes.
under the needs in the mission field topic.
He's in charge of the Southern Asia Pacific Division Adventist Mission Department.
Okay.
And the Adventist Mission is the department that is charged with going out and evangelism.
Church planting.
Right.
Front line, expansion.
Exactly.
All of that.
And he's got about 1 billion people, almost 1 billion people in his 14 countries.
14, okay.
Yeah. And he has a budget of about $600,000.
600,000 to 1 billion. That's not a very large per person.
It's like 2,000th of 1 penny per person.
Per person.
Per person.
How's he gonna, you can't even buy literature for that.
No, you can't. Not even a tract.
You can't, even one
Single
piece
page
of
black
paper.
and white piece of paper is not gonna do that. But this is a
Okay.
picture of his. Now we have looked at we usually measure the progress of the gospel as to how many countries we've entered in the world, and according to that measure, we're almost there. But the truth is, Jesus says every nation, kindred, tongue. Okay, so we're looking at the tongue part here.
Okay.
All right.
The
So
language groups.
GFI Consulting did this study for the Southern Asia Pacific Division on the basic SDA stats. What languages have
Are
we
there?
entered and have we not entered? And you can see the red is considered the unreached languages in just this one division that we've not entered. Now, this part over here, just this one part over here, had 511 languages that the SDA Church had not even touched, has not even touched. Okay?
Wow.
And a while back, just several weeks ago, a missionary, there's like one
month ago
missionary over
now.
there, he was doing an evangelistic series in one village, and the chief from another village, another tribe, another language came, and there was like an interpreter somehow. And he got a hold of this truth, and he got so excited. And he says, I'm going to take this back. So they trained him how to share this truth with his tribe. So now there's only 510 other languages. 510 languages just there.
In this one area.
Now, I've also heard from very respected, dear men in the leadership say, well, we're using, the gospel is going to the whole world, and we're using AWR to do it. And AWR is a fantastic ministry. We need to fund that and get them, empowered to reach out. But you know how many languages they're doing?
No.
80.
80 languages.
And that's a huge,
that is a huge
number of languages. But compared to 510 just for that,
yeah.
Well,
how many total languages are there in the world?
Almost 7,000.
Okay.
Now this is the number of languages. You can see.
Okay, this is the same, like the map we just saw. This is, okay, as a pie chart.
You can see the number of
Wow.
languages that have not yet been touched.
85%.
Yeah, that means no missionary, no Bible,
In the Southern Asia
tract.
Pacific division, where
Just-
a billion people live,
just
almost
one.
a billion people live.
just one division.
85%.
Yeah. Now these are the languages. All other divisions in the world have about 2,000 languages. West Central Africa Division has 1,774 languages in and of itself.
Wow.
But that division only has like 330 million people or so.
Okay.
Southern Asia Pacific Division has 1 billion people and 1,630 languages. Now you think that's a huge number until you look at how many people are in the church in the North American Division. 1.1 million people are Seventh-day Adventists in the North American Division. 1.1 million people compared to 1,630 languages, that's not so hard. That's
But
not
how
that-
many missionaries do we have out there?
Well,
Are
that's
there
the issue.
1,630 missionaries to the Southern Asia Pacific Division from North American Division?
Actually, there are 235 official missionaries from the North American Division, and
But they're not to Southern Asia Pacific Division.
Oh, no.
Some of them are.
Maybe a few. But they're all, management positions and technical
There's a
positions,
lot, yeah.
not frontline missionaries. There's AFM sends out missionaries, but they don't have as many missionaries, anywhere near as many missionaries as need to go.
Right. They need to be
out of
empowered to send more.
Out of 1.1 million, it seems like we should be able to get at least 10,000.
That would be a tithe, wouldn't it?
11,000 would be 1%.
Oh, 1%.
We should get at least 1%. 110,000 would be a tithe, 10%.
Can you imagine if we had 110,000 missionaries?
Yeah. I think
we have a special guest. We want to get to that.
Okay.
We need to keep
All
going.
right. So now this is what we're hearing, is a dearth of calls, an absence of calls. When's the last time you heard a call to be a missionary to an unreached people group or an unreached language from your
the
church?
pulpit?
From your pulpit. From the pulpit. When's the last time you've heard that? And we're going to
We
be
hear
having...
it at Faith Camp.
Yeah.
We hear it from our mission church pulpit.
Yes. But for a regular Adventist that goes to the church and then comes home, goes to church, comes home, when do they ever hear a call for a missionary, to become a missionary? There's a dearth of calls. That means there is no calls.
There are no calls.
There are no calls
Okay.
going on.
That's
Okay, now we're going to have a
A
chance.
sad reality.
We're going to take the second half of this show and open it up to discussion. So you guys can get ready to call in with your questions and your comments and your experiences.
And they can go ahead and send an email now if they want to
Yeah, send an
get
email.
it in early.
Email address is
live@missiontv.com.
Okay.
And you can send us at Facebook. Mission TV Live is the page. And then also missiontv_com if you'd like to send it by Twitter.
Yes. Now I've got a really interesting video here. While I was in Bangkok, I decided, I've heard about the fact that there's people that have never heard about Jesus, but are they actually out there? So I took my camera and I went out there and we started asking. I had a young lady with me. That spoke Thai.
Okay, that's pretty important in Thailand.
This young man is a student missionary, and he's expressing what he heard in Sabbath school back in America, and how now that he's there in Bangkok, that he's finding that that's a myth. Okay?
A myth.
A myth.
Not even just like only partially true, a total myth.
It's a total lie, actually. It's a
Oh.
complete lie that he's hearing from his teachers who have heard it from others, who have heard it from others, and it's a lie. It's a
Okay, well, I
bald-faced
think
lie.
we probably better play this then.
Okay, here we go.
Just know people. That's what I've been taught, like in Sabbath school and stuff, that Jesus is coming any day because the word has been preached everywhere around the world.
You're here in Thailand now. Is that the case?
No,
Why?
it's not, because like Pastor Doug was saying, there's less than 1% has claimed Christ as their savior, and I mean there's plenty that, I mean, sure, there may be people that have heard of him, but there's plenty that haven't even gotten that.
How will they hear? How will they know? How will they ever find the truth if we don't go? How can we fear God's love to show? Jesus desires every child his love to know. And around the world, in every tongue, to every nation, tribe, and clan, the gospel must be preached.
Yes
Okay.
okay ready
Yes.
คือคำถามของเรามีว่ารู้จักคณะวันเสาร์กลุ่มคริสเตียนวันเสาร์ไหมคะที่เขานมัสการกันวันเสาร์ที่เขาจะพูดถึงเกี่ยวกับเรื่องของพระเจ้าเคยได้ยินไหมไม่เคยได้ยิน They say they never heard about Jesus
Really?
Yeah they never ไม่เคยได้ยินเกี่ยวกับศาสนานี้มาก่อน
Would you like to know? Would you like to
อยาก
learn
จะรู้
something?
จักศาสนานี้ไหมคะ
How will they hear? How will they hear? How will they know? How will they know? How will they ever find the truth if we don't go? How can we feel? How can we
Do you watch English channel on TV
ไม่รู้กันไม่รู้
ค่ะคำถามของหนูก็คือว่าคุณตำรวจเนี่ยดูรายการภาษาอังกฤษหรือเปล่าคะดูรายการ
โอ้ที่บ้านไม่ได้ดูไม่มีเวลาเลย
ขอบ
ครั
คุณ
ครั
มากค่ะ
ครับสวัสดีครับ
Really Thinking about him have you ever heard about Jesus he said no but sometimes he saw like the poster that they put on the tree or yeah something like that
Uh-huh.
I asked him that so how do you think with when you saw that and how do you feel about Christian he said that yeah it's good because every religion is teach the people to be a good people
Oh,
yeah so
okay.
คุณลุงจะถามคุณลุงว่าคุณลุงเคยได้ยินคนมาพูดเกี่ยวกับศาสนาคริสเตียนมาพูดถึงเกี่ยวกับพระเยซูให้ฟังไหมคะไม่เคยได้ยินนะคะไม่มีญาติพี่น้องคนไหนที่เป็นคริสเตียนนะคะไม่มีนะคะและแถวที่คุณลุงอยู่ก็ไม่มีคนเป็นคริสเตียนนะคะไม่มีแล้วคุณลุงอยากจะศึกษาเกี่ยวกับคริสเตียนไหมคะไม่รู้วันไม่รู้อ่านหนังสือไม่ออกไม่ได้เข้าหนังสือแล้วเวลาอยู่บ้านเนี่ยคุณลุงดูรายการภาษาอังกฤษบ้างมีคะดูหนังฝรั่งหรือรายการฝรั่งไม่เคยดูบ้านลุงไม่มีโทรทัศน์
How will they hear if we don't go? How will they hear if we don't go?
Okay.
ยนหรือว่าเกี่ยวกับเรื่องของพระเยซูไหมไม่รู้ค่ะไม่เคยได้ยินใช่ไหมค่ะอ๋อโอเคแล้วถ้าเกิดว่ามีคนจะมาพูดหรือว่าจะมาพูดเกี่ยวกับเรื่องราวแบบนี้ให้น้องฟังน้องอยากจะรู้จักไหมคะอยากนะคะนี่ค่ะ
Okay. So there you go. There's some people that have never heard about Jesus or Christianity.
So there are needs.
Yeah.
There are lots of places, and that's in Bangkok, Thailand. That's the capital city of the country. That's not even out in the rural areas where some of the other languages are.
I think this is one of the indications of our lack of interest and involvement with Christ's work, Christ's people, is that we don't know what the needs are. When I travel, I see what the needs are, and I come back home and I'm amazed at how little we know about what the needs really are over there. And
We're getting a Skype call, sounds like.
yeah. So let's check this out. Here we go. Okay. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Tim.
Now it's about 7 o'clock in the morning for him.
Hello.
Hi.
Tim.
Good morning. Good evening.
It's about 7 o'clock in the morning for him.
Hello.
Oh,
Can you turn? Yeah, there
I
you
got a
go.
problem. I don't have any sound at the moment on my end except through the computer.
uh-oh.
That's a problem.
Good evening.
We had sound before working there, going to you. Not sure what happened.
I don't have any sound at the moment on my end except through the computer.
Okay, we're developing a nice loop going on here.
Yeah. While we're trying to set this up, I'd just like to invite our viewers to call 423-413-7321. Email us a question at live@missiontv.com or a comment. Go to Facebook. The page is Mission TV Live, or you can send us a comment or question by Twitter, MissionTV_com. So we do have someone standing by for your calls, and someone also standing by to take your emails and your Facebook comments and forward those. And so just feel free to call or comment, whichever you choose. You don't have to be on the show. They can take your call in the other room, and then they can send it through to us. So don't be shy. You don't have to be on the live by audio. You can just give your question to the young lady answering the phone.
Yes.
Okay,
Can you
is
hear
this
us now,
better?
Tim?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh,
Excellent.
praise the
We
Lord.
can hear you too.
God is good.
So here we are. You're in Cambodia.
That's right.
What time is it there?
7:30 in the morning.
How are you feeling?
Fairly fresh.
Praise the Lord. You got a good sleep then.
Yes, thank you.
And we were praying that you'd have an internet connection today, so we're thankful to see the answer to that prayer too.
God is good.
Yes.
Now, Tim, how long have you been in Cambodia now?
It's 21 years now.
21 years.
21, wow. It's longer than we remembered.
And you're actually in some kind of TV studio now with 3 cameras and everything?
Yes, we're here in Siem Reap at a place called Wat Phra Yesu. And Wat Phra Yesu is a property where there's a orphanage, a school, a church, and a TV studio. And so I'm sitting on the set in the TV studio.
Very cool.
Awesome. That is really neat. That's a beautiful set you have there.
So Wat
Thank
Phra
you.
Yesu, what does that mean?
Wat Phra Yesu basically means the Jesus Pagoda, or the place of moral teaching of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a large standard to live up to then.
We want to make that standard high, yes.
Yes, yes.
So you've been there for over 20 years. Do you think there are any needs in the mission field?
I actually think there are more needs than when we began.
Wow.
And how that works is, when we began, there weren't very many Christians to share the gospel. And now, after 21 years, take the Seventh-day Adventist Church, for example, we have about 6,000 church members. But the population is almost doubled in that. And the amount of resources we have to reach the population of 14.5 million really hasn't been increasing over the years. So the challenge is getting bigger and bigger, and the money, there's just not enough money to do it.
So, but you're there, so then Cambodia is reached.
I would like to say that, but I don't think I'm a very effective worker, because there are people just 2 kilometers away that still don't really know Jesus.
Wow.
Let's not think of the ones 20 kilometers or 30 or 50 or 100 kilometers.
But we got 3ABN, we got Hope Channel, we got all these Christian television channels. They can get it from there.
That highlights a problem, because, like, for me, it was hard for me to communicate the gospel for the first 4 or 5 years of the language, because the people here, it's lucky if 50% of them are even literate in the Khmer language, let alone understanding anything beyond hello in the English language.
So a lot of them don't even know how to read their own language.
That's true, yeah.
So even if you have literature, do you have literature in the Khmer language?
We've been blessed in that the Cambodia Adventist Mission and other entities like ours have been producing some literature, but it's just a drop in the ocean compared to the number of people in this country.
Right.
So what would it take? Because, I've heard the statistic, or somebody say there's 95% of the world has access to the gospel if they want it. What would it take for an average, maybe a poor Khmer, to get the gospel?
In many cases, they'd have to spend at least a week's salary on transport to go to a place which they've never been to before, and try to find a church that they don't even know the name of, and then maybe they'll be able to get the gospel.
But if they don't know the name of the church, how do they know the church even exists? So why would they even start that journey in the first place?
That's very true, yes. The rural people in this country, many of them rarely travel outside of their local village area. And so, there are people in my village, and we're only 6 kilometers from Siem Reap town, which is a town with an international airport. But there are people in my village that have never left the immediate area. They never traveled more than about 10 kilometers.
Wow.
And for the rural people out further, they don't have the means to travel. The bicycle or maybe a beat-up old motorbike. But then you've got to have money to put fuel in it, and they often live from day to day on what they can forest, etc.
What they can forage?
Yeah, basically. The roots they can dig up, etc.
And that's what they have for their... Wow.
Yeah, for several months of the year, that's the way it is, because the rice that they can grow doesn't go far enough.
So sometimes... are there other languages in Cambodia besides Khmer? You have the Bible in Khmer, but are there other languages?
There are about 15 major groups that are been in Cambodia for many years, and then of course there are lots of immigrants. But to my knowledge, the Bible is only fully available in the Khmer language. We're blessed in that we have 2 translations in the Khmer language, but the other groups, as far as I know, they don't have a Bible yet.
Wow.
Do they? Okay, so how many of them don't have a missionary?
Say of that 15, about 10.
Wow.
And as far as the Adventist Church is concerned, we're working with the Khmer people, which is where we have the bulk of our membership, which is about 6,000. And we have one person working with the Vietnamese people. There's a couple of 100,000 Vietnamese at least, probably more like a couple of million. The figures aren't exact. And then AFM are working with the Penang and with the Jam people. They have a couple of families working with those people groups. And some of our local Khmer pastors are working with tribal people, but most of the tribal groups, they're just totally untouched.
Wow, amazing. So what do you see as the biggest need? What are the needs that you, after being there for that long, you must have thought, what are the needs that you really have? Is it people or funds or literature?
It's all of the above. It's a little bit like growing plants. You can put in lots of nitrogen fertilizer, but if there's not enough phosphorus and potassium, the plants ain't going to grow. And we need funds, we need people, we need resources in the way of literature, multimedia resources, we need training, schools, and if you just have one without the others, it just doesn't work. It has to be a holistic approach.
But to make all those things work, you need people. I mean, if you had a lot more funds, you still couldn't do any training unless you had people.
That's right. And here in our ministry, and of course the church as well, is training local people to do the work. Mm-hmm. But there's not enough trainers. And we were blessed as a family because the Lord called us to do training, and for the first from 1998 until 2007, we were running a layman's training program. And today, many of the leaders in the church came out of the 4-month program that we ran. Mm-hmm. And there's a need for much more of that training. Today, we are focusing our particular ministry's efforts on training young people. And so we have a school from K to 12. But year 11 and 12, their course outline is a little different to the average year 11 and 12. It's a missionary-based training so that we can send out self-supporting workers, very young people as self-supporting workers. But there's a need for much more training. We need teachers to teach the children, both our Adventist children and others, about Christ. And of course, to teach them the Khmer language. And then we need teachers training, a teachers training college, so that we can train people to be teachers. So if we have school buildings, that's great. But if we could have, the government here has built lots of schools, but they don't have enough teachers to fill them. And we would be in exactly the same place. So we need people that want to come out and teach Cambodian young people to be teachers. And then we need more funds to support local workers in the field as well. For every foreigner that we have come in, and we need foreigners to work with the church and help to strengthen certain areas of the church, but their focus needs to be on training local people. And for every foreigner that comes in, they're going to need a translator or a language teacher to start with. So there are tremendous needs.
So you almost have a vicious circle going. You need the people, but you need the way to train the people, but you also need the money to provide for those people, to have the training, and so it's a vicious circle going there, almost.
It's almost exactly right. There's another problem, and I think they call it the scarcity mentality, which means that because we're so used to having very few funds to deal with, we don't plan big, because we're just trying to keep going what we've already got in existence. And because of this scarcity mentality, and this happens throughout the mission field, you don't hear these calls for people to come and help, because there's no money. Even if people came, then there's no money to support them on the ground.
So you're speaking into the question I was going to ask you next, is why don't we hear more about these needs? It seems like all the mission stories that we hear are, how somebody learned about Jesus, how they came to Christ. Oh, we lost him.
Oh, no. It's reconnecting. Well, while we're waiting, I just want to invite our viewers again to call at 423-413-7321 if you have a question for Tim, or you want to say hello, or you have a comment. We'd be happy to take your call. Or you can email us at live@missiontv.com or send to us on our Facebook page, Mission TV Live, sorry, I had to double check myself. Or you can send us by Twitter, MissionTV_com. And we would be happy to pass on to Tim your question or your greeting or your comment. Some of you I know have been to Tim's place in the mission field, and it's such a blessing to go there. It's a peaceful place, and you can tell that it is a place dedicated to God and to loving the people that God loves. And, you know, we've been there with Tim and Wendy, and we see the joy of the children there. It's such a blessing.
My boy wants to go to school there.
Yeah. Welcome back, Tim.
Okay, it's good to be back again.
So, yeah, it seems like we don't hear about calls or needs in the mission field. It seems like we hear about success stories, like mission field is where all the miracles are happening and where all the conversions are taking place. And that's all those good, warm, fuzzy kind of stories. But we don't hear about these desperate needs. I know in Thailand, they don't have a single Ellen White book in print in the Thai language. And the
And
Desire
people
of
don't know
Ages,
that.
yeah, people here in America have no clue. They have no clue that a country like that has no Ellen White, no Desire of Ages for the last 15 years
Yeah.
in print.
And, you know, the average Adventist here in America doesn't know that there are only 6,000 Adventists in the entire country of Cambodia, and there's 14.5 million people there.
Yeah.
You know,
and
and
what's your
10 language groups with no
15 language group? Oh, 10 without.
with no
Yeah.
Christian witness of any kind. So
And what's your outreach personal ministries budget for the Cambodia Adventist mission?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say this. The evangelism budget was zero.
zero.
The training budget was zero.
Zero.
That's not to say that we don't do the mission's not doing anything, but they depend on donations on top of the budget to be able to go forward and do those things. Because what we actually have in budget from tithes and from appropriations that come down through the church, it's just enough to keep what we're doing going without adding extra things on.
Doesn't that send a message to the leaders of the foreign missions like the Cambodia Adventist mission that, you know, we don't really care about expansion. We just barely care enough to keep things going as it is. I mean, how can they think about reaching their entire country when they can barely maintain what they have?
Yeah, it's a challenge. You know, I sit on the executive committee for the Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Cambodia, and you know we often have ideas, but they just sort of stop when the dollar figure comes up because the money's not there to go forward.
So that's that scarcity mentality again playing in there.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the truth is that the giving to foreign missions has been going down for the last 70 years. So this mentality is in our minds without us even knowing that it's there. We just think missionary, oh, poor, you know, nonprofit, oh, can't afford anything, cheap, you know. But it doesn't have to be like that.
No, and God's work really deserves our best.
It does.
It deserves our all, actually.
It does.
Both sides have a part to play. So in my case as a missionary, I have to plan and trust in God, not in the people that are going to give, but in God that He will find the funds. Mm-hmm. He was able to keep 1 million people plus fed in the desert for 40 years as the Israelites transferred from Egypt to the land of Canaan. Mm-hmm. And He can do that for us today. So on my part as a missionary, I need to plan and move forward, trusting that God will provide. But back in the home countries, there needs to be a new attitude toward mission, to see that rather than spending money on fast foods and things that aren't important, that money could make a huge difference in the mission field.
Okay. Well,
you know,
at least
my staff here are getting paid $111 US a month, and I provide them accommodation. And And how often do people in the US just blow away $100 just like that without really thinking about it too much on things that aren't really important? And yet here it'll keep a person busy sharing the gospel for a whole month.
Yeah,
Wow.
our average salary is about $100 a day. Somebody that's employed anyway. Oh,
I think we lost him again.
Yeah,
Well, see if you can get him back again.
yeah. So, that's the thing. It's kind of this vicious cycle that we need to. It's like we need to call for people to get involved, but it's almost like you start to lose heart about calling people
There he is.
to get involved.
Welcome back again.
Hi, Tim.
This is the hazards of internet, long
Around the
distance,
world, yes.
on the other side of the world. That's okay, at least he's still there.
We know if he disappears, it's just, the
It's just
connection
the
gone.
internet,
He's
yeah.
still okay.
Well, we did have one question.
Okay.
And that is, I think Tim may have said already, but how many churches are there in Cambodia? How many Adventist churches are there? Uh-oh, we lost him again.
Oh,
Oh, dear. Well, see if you can get him back again.
yes, I will. So how many churches?
Do you know how many churches
I
there are?
don't.
Okay,
I
well,
don't.
you can't answer that question, then we'll have to wait
I
for...
think I do, but
Tim
I'd
to
rather
tell
have
us.
him answer because he would know for sure. I would be guessing.
Okay.
So, but this is the issue: is people like him? They're just flat out, just keeping up because there's so few workers that they either have to tell people about the need or do my work for today and move forward. Tell people about the need, and usually, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more fun to just move forward than to tell people about the need because it seems as though the people that you tell
Don't care.
don't really want to
Or
know or don't care. They're like,
Respond,
yeah.
at least. Even if they do care, they don't do anything different about it. They don't act on the...
Well, I wouldn't like to say that exactly. We have some wonderful people that support our ministry.
Right.
And it's not a large group of people, but it's a small group that give a lot, and we're very thankful for them. But yeah, each day has a lot to be done, and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about communicating with the rest of the world about what's going on here. We do send out a newsletter, but it's about quarterly, if that much, if I'm lucky, because I'm busy. But because of that, maybe there's a disconnect. Those of us that are missionaries that are busy out in the field, we don't tend to communicate that much back with the home countries, and then the whole need is lost as well, because back in the home countries, everybody's busy as well, and so there's a disconnect. That's what I like about what you're doing with Mission TV, because it's a way of bringing that need into people's living rooms so that it reminds them that, yes, there is a great need out there.
And this is our whole goal, is that God, wants His church involved.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people probably would be involved if they knew more about the needs.
Right.
And earlier you were mentioning about the fact that we get that mission story and it's always a warm fuzzy. It makes us feel good because we've done something, we're reaching some people. If you watch CNN or one of the big news broadcasters, they'll give you a news event and you'll think, like, for example, a car bomb goes off in Baghdad, and immediately you think, well, all of Iraq is unsafe, and that car bomb just went off on one little street in Baghdad, and most of the people in Baghdad didn't even know about it. And sometimes we do the same with our mission stories, but the opposite. Instead of telling the bad news like the news carriers, we tell the good news, and people think, well, that's good, everything's good. But actually, we're telling the good news about a lady who's given their life to Christ, but 2 houses down, the people still haven't heard about Jesus.
Tim, we had a question from one of our viewers, and that was, how many churches are there, Adventist churches are there in Cambodia at this point?
As far as organized churches, there are 6. but we have companies and groups. I think it's about 189 at the moment around the country.
Okay, so they're smaller companies then. A company is 100 and some, or?
A company's 25 or more.
25 or more. Okay, so 6 official churches, but approximately 180 something companies and groups.
Yeah.
Wow, that's wonderful. But then compare that to the number of people that are there. There's a lot of areas that aren't reached.
That's right. And we have, I think, 30-odd groups in Phnom Penh. And Phnom Penh is a city of 2 million plus. And then the other groups are just scattered all over the country. And of course, this is a poor country. Roads are not great. It's hard to get around. It takes a long time. And so we'll have, you might travel 50, 100 kilometers between one small worship group and the next.
Wow.
And all the people living in between still haven't heard about Jesus.
Wow.
And the people that are hosting that worship group, or that are the main people there, if that's a Bible worker or a pastor, they can't afford usually to travel to all those people in between them and the next worship group either. So the people can't afford to travel, and the workers can't either.
That's right. And then there's the challenge of leading a person, discipling a person to Christ, because like America, most people are basically Christian. They may call themselves atheists, but they understand the basics of Christianity. Where here in Cambodia and many of the Southeast Asian countries, people are Buddhist. They have a Buddhist background. They know nothing about Christianity. They know nothing about the stories in the Bible. So when you disciple a person, here there's a whole lot more work to do than, say, in the US or in Australia, because you've got to start from zero and teach them everything. And so it takes a lot longer to work with individuals, and so the gospel moves slower.
So usually elementary school or high school does the best job of discipling over long term. How many schools, SDA schools, are there in Cambodia?
Well, we have 2 K-12 schools, one in Phnom Penh City, which is operated by the mission, and one here at Wat Phra Yesue, which Salt Ministries operates. And then there are a number of grade schools from grade 1 and to grade 6. Let me think, there are, I think, 4 altogether. I missed out one other K-12, that's the International Children's Care Orphanage School in Kompong Tom. But, if we take that school, for example, most of the teachers are not Christian because we just don't have enough Christian teachers around.
Wow.
So there are challenges there. Now, what we're trying to do here is, with our Year 11 and 12 course, part of the...
Oh, he's gone.
Lost him again. Well, you better try to get him back again. It's such a blessing to talk to Tim, because it's, especially having been there, but even him coming over here, he was with us at Faith Camp last year. We went to several different churches, and it's such a blessing to see that love for people, even, here, where we're used to kind of people being a little more distant to each other. We all like to protect ourselves. It's such a blessing to see that care and concern for others.
Yes.
Tim, are you there? You are there. Good.
So there are needs. So we've established that there are needs in the mission field, and it seems as though we're just not hearing about them. Could it be because there's so few missionaries actually on the front lines engaging, that's why we don't hear about the needs very much, because there just aren't very many people out there? Kind of like missionaries from home communicate back home. They're like reporters, but there's so few of them. Not everybody in North... Actually, right now, I think there's 0.02% of our membership in North America are missionaries. And that's the official missionaries. If you include all the missionaries, all volunteer missionaries, all AFM missionaries, all whatever, then it's like 0.2% are missionaries. So with that few missionaries going out, no wonder we don't hear very many stories. No wonder we don't hear about very many needs, and no wonder we don't have very many calls. It's just like we've abandoned, in the mainstream work, the call to be a missionary.
Yeah. I became a missionary because I read mission storybooks.
Yeah.
And then when I wrote to the General Conference to ask for a volunteer position somewhere in the world, they wrote back and said, well, you don't really have any experience, so we can't use you. And now I can understand that, because you send somebody out into the mission field without any experience, you're worried about what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So God had other plans. He sent us out anyway. And so here we are 28 years later, we're still out in the mission field, 3 countries later, and it's the most wonderful place to live in the world.
And you have experience now.
Yeah.
And you won your experience the hard way.
Yeah.
On the job training, right?
On the job training, and that's the best way to get your training to be a missionary.
Because God can teach you as you go.
That's right. I say I've got a professor of theology, and that's the Holy Spirit, and you can't get a better professor than that.
Yes. As a matter of fact, Mrs. White has a statement that says that it's the simple people, the practical people that can reach the hearts of the people that they're reaching better than those that have a big degree, because they can come down to the level where the people are and bring them up. Whereas the people that have the degree and all the training, they're like here, and all the people don't really understand what they're talking about. It doesn't connect. And so I think somebody said earlier today that the weakness, in our weakness, He is made strong. So
He
it kind
is shown to be strong.
takes
yeah.
away any of our excuses.
Right.
I'm not fit.
Our time is almost up. But Tim, do you have something you'd like to say to our audience today? An appeal or just something from your heart that you'd like to share briefly with our audience?
Well, I think I'm sitting here in this chair today because I asked God, what would you have me do? And
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Lost him right there.
We'll get him back.
Okay, get him back
We'll
and
get
let him
back.
finish.
Okay.
Because I want to hear,
Yes, me too.
need to hear what he has to say.
So it'll take a couple of seconds, but
Yeah, our time is almost up. We need to close very
I want
quickly.
to read this to you because, sometimes I get so perplexed about the needs in the mission field. And this is something that
Okay,
really
Tim's
gives
back
me...
now.
Okay, hold on a second. This gives me great comfort to know that I'm not the only one. This is Mrs. White writing. She says, "There are times when a distinct view is presented to me of the condition of the remnant church, a condition of appalling indifference to the needs of a world perishing for lack of a knowledge of the truth for this time. Then I have hours and sometimes days of intense anguish." This is the prophet. Can you imagine her having hours and days of intense anguish? "Many to whom have been committed the saving truths of the third angel's message fail of realizing that the salvation of souls is dependent upon the consecration and activity of God's church. Many are using their blessings in the service of self. Oh, how my heart aches because Christ is put to shame by their unchristlike behavior. But after the agony is past, I feel like working harder than ever to arouse them to put forth unselfish effort for the saving of their fellow men."
Amen. Yeah,
Okay.
back to finishing up what I was saying.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
All of us need to get down on our knees and say, "Lord, here am I, send me." And be willing to go wherever God sends and do whatever He asks. If He's not going to send you out to a mission field, maybe He's going to ask for a considerable amount of what's in your bank. But give, and it will be given unto you. Whether that be you give your life or you give your finances, whatever. Get down on your knees and pray, "Lord, here am I, send me." And just listen and see what the Lord wants to do through you and in your life, and you will be blessed.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tim.
Yes.
We appreciate you getting up early and getting a crew together to run camera and switcher and everything so that we could see you on Skype today, and that's such a blessing and a
Yeah.
privilege. And we appreciate you sharing from your experience. And I just want to challenge our viewers as we come to a close this evening to take every opportunity to do as Tim has suggested, and pray and say, Lord, what do you want me to do? Am I where you want me to be? Am I doing what you want me to do? We've heard just a glimpse from one country of the situation in the mission field, the actual physical and personnel and financial needs. We've heard from one country, and there are over 200 countries in this world. And how many language groups are there? Over almost 7,000. There are so many needs in this world today. The needs have to be met. And maybe you can meet the needs in a certain area that, well, we know, Mrs. White says that there is a special place. Just as surely as there is a mansion in heaven for each of us, there is a special place in God's work for each of us. And no one else can take our place. And she also says, and it breaks my heart, she says that there will be people that will not be in heaven because we were not in our place in the mission field. We did not do what he wanted us to do. So I want to challenge you to take up this gauntlet that Tim has laid down this evening and ask the Lord where you should be. And wherever you are, until you hear his clear call to go somewhere else, and it might not be, it won't be writing in the sky, and it won't be a handwriting on the wall. Usually he'll lay a people group on your heart. He'll start opening doors for you. It's not going to be like, hey, you should go to the mission field, because he's already told us that. But anyway, I just want to challenge you to take up the call.
To hasten.
To be a part of hastening the second coming. Our topic for next week is going to be the annual sacrifice offering.
This is really cool because I didn't know what the annual sacrifice is.
It's time to close the show.
Yeah, I know. But I just want to say this because the annual sacrifice is so cool because everything that you give to the annual sacrifice, 100% goes to frontline workers.
Right, church planting.
And that's the one thing where it can really move the gospel forward and hasten the coming of Jesus Christ. And nobody knows what annual sacrifice is anymore. And so next week we're going to learn about the annual sacrifice and what it is. Maybe, pray hard this week, but maybe next week we can get Gary Krause to do a virtual visit. Gary Krause is the director of Adventist Missions, and he knows what that's all about. He's very excited about it. And I'm putting it into our timeline here on our Mission TV. So if you watch Mission TV enough, you'll see Gary Krause talking about the annual sacrifice.
Okay. So next week, the annual sacrifice offering. And our question for this week, and you can reply by email, Facebook, or Twitter, and I'll give you those again in just a moment. But our question is, what is it? What is the annual sacrifice offering? You can reply by email, live@missiontv.com. You can reply by going to our Facebook page at Mission TV Live, or you can send us a Twitter at MissionTV_com.
They can send us a tweet.
A tweet, sorry.
On Twitter.
By Twitter.
Yes.
A tweet.
A tweeter.
Are you done?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Mission TV Live. We look forward to seeing you next Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. May God bless you as you search for heavenly treasure and you take up this call.